No, it's got it. I got it. It is. All right, good deal. I just missed a step. Yeah. Okay, we're ready. Thanks. Yep, bye. Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are ready to go here. So, as I mentioned before, this is Rachel. She's from SLUG. She'll tell you more about what that's all about. And she was also going to give us some vocabulary words related to organic gardening. They will show up on red on the screen. And make sure that your electronics are put away. Ryan. Oh, sorry. Put your phone away, Ryan. Thank you.
That was mean. You just called him out.
I know. Okay, go. You're ready.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm from SLUG, which stands for Sustainable Lawrence University Gardens. This is our garden. We have a 1/4 acre. I'm a senior this year, so I'm going to be graduating in June. But there's a lot more of us, SLUGs, as we call ourselves. So we have 30 people in our organization and 15 of us in our co-op, which I'll go into a little bit more later. Can everybody flip over your paper and write down 2 or 3 words about what sustainability or what the word sustainable means to you? I know it's early.
And you guys learned this. Sustainability was the first vocabulary word we learned this year, so it's a good practice. It will come up on our semester and final exam. Well, Lainey will help you.
Is there somewhere I can write down answers? I don't remember.
Right. Let me get you a whiteboard.
Awesome.
Actually, looks like Charlotte's getting you one.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I didn't think of it either. Is that the biggest? Yeah, it is the biggest. Sorry, it's not as big as this is, but we'll just lean it up here.
I don't think we used all of this last time anyway. Thank you so much.
All right, Lainey and Brianna, what did you guys come up with?
Okay. So I don't know if this is correct, but I said sustainability, the ability to be sustainable is a quality for all aspects of an environment.
Okay, so required for all aspects of the environment. I like that one. Jada and Cassie, what did you guys come up with? Make sure we have something in the future. Back table. Diego, what did you come up with? Your table for sustainability. Oh yeah, he is. Sorry. He's sitting here right where you said. Okay, what'd you guys come up with, Diego? Long lasting. Nick and Ryan, what'd you guys come up with?
Reusing stuff for the future.
Reusing. Okay. Johnson, what'd your table come up with?
Strong support.
Strong sport. Okay. Sangsai, what did you and Angel come up with? Strong, good. All right. Sean, anything want to add to that? Maintaining. Okay. All right. Thank you for helping Rachel out with that. There we go.
Those are some awesome words. Thank you. So when a lot of the time when SLUG thinks about sustainability, we sort of think about it in all of these different ways, and by that we want to minimize our waste, and specifically our food waste, since we are a gardening and food co-op, as much as possible. And so to do that, we're using all of these words. So we're trying to maintain what we have, the environment, and maintain our resources. We're reusing when we can. We're looking towards the future and seeing how we can reuse what we can, and so we're not being wasteful. And we're trying to do this in all different aspects of our co-op. So while it is food oriented, we do it in all sorts of different ways. So our program goal, besides just being a sustainable...
1 second. This needs to go down on your sheet in that section that says program goal. Okay, go ahead.
So our program goal, besides just being as sustainable...
What does it say?
Presentation goals, goals.
Okay, yes, same thing.
Which one of them? The first one? Presentation goals? Two different goals.
Oh, I printed off the wrong sheets for you. Right where you can just combine those two and just write into both boxes.
Okay.
You guys, yeah, I printed off the wrong sheet this morning. I didn't do the organic one. I did the commercial egg one. But just go with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So our main goal is to be sustainable, and we do that by eating locally, shopping at our farmers market, and also only buying organic produce when we can. So it's not covered in herbicides and pesticides. But beyond that, we also have other major goals. So we want to be an inclusive space, so that we can talk about living sustainably with anybody, and that our garden is open to everyone. So it's not just like 5 people in the garden all the time. We want everybody to feel welcome in the garden. And then we also, I mentioned, we use organic practices. So we don't use pesticides in our garden. We buy local, we compost, and we try to reuse as much as possible. We also bring in speakers a lot of the time as part of the inclusive space thing too, to talk about food justice and veganism and other aspects of making our space and just our community more inclusive.
So she just said the word food justice. What term would that relate to that you guys have learned? Environmental justice. Yes, food justice is just specific to food, which is that whole first PowerPoint that I'll share that with you, that I showed you. Okay.
So first, our co-op is sort of a subsection of our garden, and there are 15 members in our co-op, and so it's sort of time heavy in commitment. So we have to volunteer in the garden at least once a week, and usually when you volunteer in the garden, it can be anywhere from 2 to 4 hours.
Hold on 1 second. Words in red are vocab, so make sure you're getting those into the vocabulary section or the notes section down there. Okay, go ahead.
So beyond just volunteering in the garden in the fall and the spring, we also compost once a week, and that is all year round. We have to attend at least 2 meetings. We're supposed to attend all food justice, environmental justice related talks that happen on campus throughout the year. We do dishes once a week for the house. We cook once a week for the house. And then we also you have to go shopping at least 2 times per term. But a lot of the time it's more like 5 or 6 times per term because we eat a lot of food. And so it seems like a lot of time that we're investing in this co-op just for essentially what we're getting out of it is fresh produce. We get a sense of community, so all these people have graduated now, but you get a strong sense of community because it is a group of people centered around the same values and goals, and you are spending so much of your time with them. So I've made a lot of long-lasting friendships through this organization. I'm actually going to California in a few weeks to visit one of the friendships I've made through this organization. And then you also get just the knowledge of how to live sustainably, how to grow sustainably, and how to process food. And this sort of varies from a CSA or a farmer's market. So a CSA is just investing in a farming operation in exchange for regular seasonal produce. So for this, there's less of a community around it. So instead of investing a ton of your time, more likely you'll be making a monetary investment, although sometimes it is an investment of time by working at a farm. But it's more just I'm going to pay and get seasonal veggies every week from this farmer. And then a farmer's market is a place to buy local seasonal produce. So even though I'm part of a co-op, we still go to the farmer's market every single week to get local seasonal produce.
All right. So we have several does anybody in here belong to a CSA, your family? A community supported agriculture, where you get like the box of produce every month? Nobody does? Okay. There's one at Riverview Gardens, is the closest one to where we live. There's a couple of them out in Neenah, and I think there's a couple of them out in Greenville, Grand Chute area as well. And if you're interested in those things, there are ways to find out about them, but your family just gets whatever produce the gardener or farmer produces during that month. They just bring you it's seasonal stuff. And then how many of you guys have shopped at the farmer's market? Just 3 of you have shopped at the farm. 4 of you have shopped at the farmer's. 5. Okay. Try it sometime. It's a great thing to do on a Saturday morning, yes? Yeah, they have lots of good stuff down there. Okay.
So a year in the life of the SLUG garden. So we start by planting, and then we plant and we transplant everything. And then throughout the spring and the summer, we're caring and harvesting for our plants. But then one of the sort of significant aspects that make us a closed loop system is that we utilize all of our produce, and what we can't utilize, we compost. So instead of growing the food and eating the food, and what we don't eat we throw out, we are growing the food, eating the food. What we don't eat, we're composting, and that's going back into the soil to grow the next year's food. So we're sort of minimizing waste at every single step of the process, so that we can minimize our waste as much as possible.
Putting the beds to bed. She'll talk about what that means.
Yeah.
Oh, and the other thing Freddie, you talked about with the closed loop is also seed saving. So they'll collect their own seeds to use them again the next year. That's another closed loop thing. Anytime they're not buying from the outside or wasting out, that's creating a closed loop system. And the more closed loop your system is, the more sustainable it is. Okay? Does that make sense to everybody? Nick, did that make sense? Okay, good. All right.
So we start by planning our garden. So we made this plan not even a week ago. We made it on Tuesday last week. So you guys have us beat a little bit because you've already started planting. But this is our plan for the year. We have 13 rows with tomato and basil, which it might seem like a lot given the size of our garden because we have a really small garden. But we do sell a lot of our produce to our local cafeteria, which you could see in the background of the first picture, but I forgot to point it out. It's like right across the street from our garden. But they buy all of our tomatoes pretty much, and so if we literally just sold or just grew tomatoes, they would buy all of it, and that's how we would probably make the most money. But as a club, we kind of decided that wouldn't be as much fun. So we keep growing more fun things. So we grow a bunch of perennials. So this is our food forest, is our perennials. So they come back every year, and in there we have different types of berries and peaches Last year they did pretty well. We're still eating some of the frozen peaches that we got from our peach harvest, and they're really, really delicious, and I love to put them in my oatmeal. But the berries haven't been doing as well historically in the past, but that's okay because we're working on it for this summer. Beyond that, we do a bunch of bush beans because we've had really good results with that. And then some root vegetables like radishes and beets, but we haven't had a huge luck with carrots. And then we also have our hoop house.
Hold on before you go into the hoop house. So we're learning about soils right now. What kind of soil is predominant in Outagamie County? I heard somebody say it. It is clay. It is clay. How does the predominance of clay explain their lack of ability to grow carrots, boys and girls? Talk it over with your neighbors. Helen, Sean, you guys can make together. Why does clay make it harder to grow carrots? It sounds like you ladies have an idea up here. Go ahead. What did you guys come up with?
I said because carrots need silts for a loam to grow, not just like one specific type of soil.
You're correct about that, but why do they need that? Well, how does that help them? What is it about carrots? What are they having to do that they can't do in clay very easily? They can't move into the ground, right? It's really hard. You have to really add a lot of compost to your soil and really till it up a lot or work it up a lot if you're going to get good root vegetables in clay soil, right? Even though radishes and beets are root vegetables, they tend to grow more towards the top of the ground. They'll come up out of the ground if they can't get in. Carrots have to go in. So we also can't grow potatoes around here with a hoot. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
That's part of the reason why we're also trying carrots in the hoop house, because we can sort of control the soil more so in there. And then we're also growing a ton of peppers and eggplants and cucumbers. So the hoop house is a more environment controlled area, so it's kind of like a greenhouse. But it's not made of glass, it's made of like a plastic.
And I think I have one in the next picture slide.
Oh, yeah.
So. Yep, there we go.
So this is a picture of our hoop house with some things growing in it. So this would be like fall when things are like huge.
And well, I think this one is when they're small.
Yeah. But that's our hoop house, and that's where peppers and things will be growing. So it gets way hotter. So everything starts out in the hoop house to begin with because everything is teeny tiny. So right now we planted some this weekend. So we have plants, they don't quite look like this yet because we just planted this weekend. But once they look like this, more or less, we'll put them in the hoop house next term because it'll get warmer in there. So they'll all be happy in there. And then we can start doing more planting outside once it's actually warm. And then we also...
Oops, I missed the slide here.
Yeah.
Oh, there.
Yeah. We also do some transplanting, which you can see, and we fluff the beds. Ooh, I love fluffing the beds. We fluff the beds before we put anything in the beds. So that's just how we aerate the soil. So we essentially take out the soil, put it in a bucket, and then move the soil next to it into the spot where the soil was. So it's essentially like it's Lego blocks, moving every Lego block over. But it makes the soil full of air, which makes all the bacteria in it happy, and makes our plants grow better.
Do you add fresh compost when you do that then too?
Yeah, we add compost on top, I believe, after that.
Okay. Oh, you want to talk about companion planting? And
then we also do companion planting, which is just essentially two plants that you plant together because they work better together than they would separately. So an example that we use a lot is tomato and basil. So tomato provides some shelter and protection for the basil plant, and the basil plant protects the tomato plant from pests. So they both grow happier and healthier together than they would apart.
Okay. And then corn and squash are an example that's been done for thousands of years here in America. Native Americans were companion planting squash and corn together for literally hundreds of thousands of years. I don't know, thousands of years. I don't know, hundreds of thousands of years, because the corn provides some shade for the squash and protection there, and in a place the vines can sometimes grow up if they want to. And then the big leaves of the squash keep the weeds out of the corn. And they actually would also grow beans with that, and it's called the Three Sisters Garden. We've had a presentation from a Native American organic gardening program from up by Green Bay that I cannot pronounce. Quinoa, I think is how you say that. It's spelled like TW something or other. But anyway, they have come and spoken to us, and that's one of those traditional things. So just know that.
Yeah. So that's transplanting. I was talking about this presentation and I got corrected by somebody because I messed up in the other presentations. We do plant some of our seeds directly into the bed later in the season, so we don't start all of them out in the spring.
Oh, probably the lettuces and stuff. You want to talk about that too?
Oh yeah. We also do fencing. So instead of using pesticides, we sort of take on a more physical way to try and keep our pests out. So in the garden, we have deer and voles and rabbits and voles and gophers, and the voles are really bad. So we put up fencing around all of our beds. So we have 2 layers of chicken wire, and then we also have all these stakes around the bed. So we essentially take one harder, stiffer piece of chicken wire and staple it to the stake into the ground, and then take the lighter one and more flexible one with smaller mesh so it's harder to get through for pests, and staple that one to the ground and to the posts. And then at the end of the year, you can see they're about to set up the fence here. We take it all down, and instead of throwing out the posts and throwing out the chicken wire, we roll it all back up and we use it the next year. So that's another way that we're trying to reuse all of our resources, rather than oh, this chicken wire is kind of gross. We try and reuse all of it if we can, unless a critter really got at it, and then we'll cut off a section. And so then caring for our plants after everything is planted. The main thing is weeding, and I forgot to mention this. One of the main ways we try to get and minimize weeding is we lay down newspaper. So instead of using herbicides, we just lay down newspaper in our garden so it's harder for the weeds to poke through. We harvest and we weed. Harvest goes from the end of spring, late spring, until late fall. We also have all sorts of random things growing in our garden that we didn't we put there years ago, but we my generation didn't really put there, but we're still sort of reaping the benefits from. So an example of this is in this bed. You can see
perennials, by the way, those would be. So yeah, perennials should be a vocab word for you guys. It'll be coming up later too. Yeah.
All around this bed you can see chives, which are sort of green oniony. They have pretty purple blossoms on them during a certain time in the spring. We have not planted chives, but they have taken over our garden, and they grow on the edges of every single bed. So we harvest a lot of chives and try and sell them to our cafeteria, and that's also sort of been the same way with mint. Has taken over a large section.
And that's mint right there. You can see in the front foreground.
We've had mint take over a large section of our garden. We have some sage just growing in our garden. We have rhubarb, a bunch of huge rhubarb plants just growing adjacent to our little shack that we keep all of our tools in. So we try and use all the things we don't plant as well. And we're also trying to get better at that. So one of the things we know is growing in our garden or near our garden is stinging nettle, but we haven't started harvesting that, but that's one of our goals for this year, is to get better about foraging and harvesting the other things around our garden that we didn't put there, but we could still eat.
Oops. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. So then we harvest, ooh, I love that picture of the tomatoes. And Bon Appetit is the name of our food provider at our cafeteria. So we harvest and we give most of our produce to them. We also sell some of our produce around our campus and around Appleton. I mentioned the food forest earlier, which was the 3 rows of perennials and the peach trees growing on the side. So that's our food forest in the garden.
And I just want to make sure everybody understands, perennials are plants that come up year after year after year, even if you don't plant them again. They take care of themselves. So if you're not familiar with that word, the other type of plants are all annuals, which come up just one season. And we'll spend some time in the next couple of days focusing on some of those type of vocabulary words, but I thought I would introduce them today for all of you.
And that's one of the ways our garden varies a lot from other gardens too, is I have some friends at the big garden at the University of Wisconsin, and so pretty much their entire garden is perennials. And so, but we do annuals, which is just a slight difference between the two of us, but I think we like planting annually. So we harvest in the spring and sell it to Bon App and around campus, and then also throughout the summer, and our main harvest is in the fall. We actually have a harvest festival where we harvest a ton of food and then we cook it all, and then I think last year or this year we had about 250 people come and we have live music and a bunch of food, and it's just a big celebration of our harvest. So. And then we try and utilize all of the produce that we can with what we have. So we'll make different types of sauces, we'll make soups. As I mentioned before, the peaches and the berries we get, we freeze. This is to people that graduated last year, and they're selling at Lawrence the produce they harvested over the summer. But you can see this is a big thing of honey, so we also get honey, which I'll also go into a little bit later. But we try and utilize everything we can and freeze everything we can for the winter. So in the fall, when we're getting 80 pounds of tomatoes a week, which is not an exaggeration, and we can't eat 80 pounds of tomatoes a week, we can save that and it's not going bad, and so then we can eat it in the winter. And so I'm still eating tomatoes even though they're out of season because we froze them.
And that's one of the big benefits of your co-op program, right? Is that you get all that produce. Okay.
Yep. And something also interesting is because we are a local program, I think it's funny they are making pesto with spinach when usually we do not make pesto with spinach, just because we never have spinach in the house. Because it's pretty much always kale, because we don't really grow spinach in the garden. So we're using what we can. So this must have been in the winter because we get a lot of spinach in the winter. It looks like it was in August. I don't know what's going on there. But we only are buying what's also seasonal.
I wonder if those are not spinach leaves or basil leaves.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's probably it.
Yeah, spinach and basil, like from this standpoint, in the picture, look the same.
Yeah.
So, okay.
And so then we put our beds to sleep. So after everything is harvested, we pull out all of the plants and we compost those, and we take down all of the fencing and we roll those up and tidy those up, put them in the shed to protect them from the sort of weather so that we can reuse them more. And then we put the beds to sleep by aerating the soil, adding a layer of newspaper, and then adding compost on top. So that just sort of adds air to the soil for the microbes, and then adds a ton of nutrients to the soil for the microbes for over the summer. So in the spring, we're starting with nutrient-rich soil, which sort of leads to composting, which I think is the next slide. So how many people here collect food waste or compost at their house. Nice. Composting is sort of collecting all your plant waste or eggshells or coffee grounds, and then we'll turn that into nutrient-rich soil. And one of the ways to do this is vermiculture, which we are not currently doing. We've done in the past, and I think we might do again soon, but that's actually using worms to aid in composting to help quicken the pace of it because it can take a while, and then also get more nutrients out of it. So this is what our compost bins used to look like. They were just like 3 really big sort of pits of compost, like probably the size of this square of tables here. And it was not going well because the compost could not get much air, and microbes need air in order to decompose the plant matter more successfully. So we've switched to a windrow style of composting. So we have 3 windrows in our garden, which are pretty much just like long, like little worm type pile. They look like worms, but we don't have worms in them. Worms of compost in the garden. So they're like about hip height, about this wide, and they'll go like about the length of the room. So more air can get to the soil, so they're actually taking about 3 months less to decompose fully so that we can use them than they were before, which is really exciting. Does anybody know good and bad things to put in compost? There are some on the board.
So what are some of the good things to put in compost? Yeah, eggshells is on that list. What else? Coffee grounds is on the list. Okay, what are some things you don't want, Nick? I heard you listing off some don't wants. What were they? Yeah, metal. Okay, you don't want to put any metal in there. Okay, anything else you don't want to put in your compost? I think I heard somebody back there say plastic. Was that right? Did somebody say that? Yeah, no plastic in there. What else should not be in your compost? What kind of food waste should not be in compost? We're doing the nots for now. Highly processed food, right. Tommy, you are correct. You do not want to put in highly processed stuff, particularly if it's greasy like French fries. It doesn't break down very efficiently.
What about meat? Do you think meat would be a good thing to put in there or a bad thing?
Good or bad? If you think it's good, put your thumb up. If you think it's bad, put your thumb down. Come on. All right. So about half and half. You guys don't know for sure. Okay, the girls are heavy to the. It's not a good thing. And a couple of the guys over here I saw doing this. Yeah, it's a bad thing. Does anybody know why? Yeah, it goes rancid, gets really stinky. Also, it attracts a lot of critters you probably don't want in your garden, like raccoons. That'll just annihilate your garden. Yeah, I think we better move on though because we're time. We only have 4 minutes. Okay.
And then lastly, we have an apiary. So we have 3 beehives, and each of the beehive has a name. But I still only remember 2 of them. And the 2 I remember, one is named Genevieve and one is named Mabel. And whenever the beehive gets a new queen, the beehive gets a new name. So we actually renamed them both recently because last winter all of our bees died because of the false spring. So we just got new queens. So we have honeybees. We usually get around 2 big buckets of honey a year, but last year we only got about half of 1 bucket just because of the death of the bees in the winter. So these are some of our beekeepers ready to keep the bees. We have one of the highest diversity of pollinators in Appleton, which is really exciting. And we also, a lot of people will buy their bees online, which is why they don't necessarily have a high diversity in their bee populations.
Talking genetic diversity now.
Yeah. And we go, when people have a honeybee problem, our bee guy, Larry, will go to their backyard and capture the bees and relocate them to our hive. So instead of being killed or something, they're relocated to our hive, which helps diversity as well.
Yeah, because if you buy them online, you buy a like a purebred breed of bees. And if you're getting them from the wild, you're getting ones that have interbred with all kinds of different types of honeybees. And so you're going to get that genetic diversity. Also, just a little note to people, the difference between honeybees and the other things. So honeybees and bumblebees both are considered the good bees because they are pollinating. Hornets and yellow jackets are not actually true bees. They're more scavengers. They're not pollinators per se. Also, honeybees particularly don't sting very much. That's why she can just wear normal pants. The only time they sting, you want to have that jacket on and that hood because you don't want them to get under your clothes. If they feel trapped, they'll sting. But how many times can a honeybee sting? Just once, and they die because they have to pull their whole tail off in order to do the stinging. So they aren't going to sting. It's going to kill them to sting. They're not going to sting unless they have to. Like I said, trapped under clothes is usually how you get stung from a honeybee. Hornets and wasps, on the other hand, are super territorial, and they will come out to get you. I mean, it's not your imagination. We had them in our door to our chicken coop last summer, and I got stung several times across my chest and my neck and I was like 4 or 5 feet away yet. And then we thought we'd gotten rid of them, and then they came back again. So my husband ended up burning the whole door because they were in between the panels of the door, and we just rebuilt the door. Yeah, they're super, super aggressive. So yeah.
Are bees like genetically modified honeybees?
They're not genetically modified. They're subspecies from Africa. Yeah.
Wait, bumblebees do this?
They will, but they generally don't. They're also not territorial aggressive. They're pollinators, so they're more interested in that. As long as you don't like trap them in your hands or get them trapped, bumblebees will leave you alone too. And we have several species of bumblebees in Wisconsin right now that are on the endangered species list. So, all right. Anybody have questions? Oh, fill out your last 2 boxes. How does this apply to you and questions? So, Joe has a question.
When do you guys harvest the honey? Because I know some people like to do it in August, but other people like to do it later.
We do it later because we are gone throughout the summer, most of us. So we come back in September. So we usually do it when we get back.
Okay, leave your notes right here on your way out, please. And thank Rachel on your way out, please. Yes, here you go.
I almost got stung in the mouth by a yellow jacket.